The modernist movement in American literature is basically sandwiched between the two world wars, World War I and World War II, which covers approximately the period of 1900 to 1945. These are our objectives or goals for the unit. Some terms that you need to know. Central idea is like a thesis statement. It is a statement of yours or an author's main points. Theme, a broad idea, message, or moral of a story. The message can be about life, society, or human nature. Themes often explore timeless and universal ideas and are almost always implied rather than stated explicitly. The historical background to the modern period. It took place during and after World War I, the 1929 market crash, the Dust Bowl, and the Great Depression. World War I occurred between 1914 and 1918. It was the first time that Americans faced a bloodbath war. This is called the end of the Age of Innocence for Americans. Then there was the Prohibition in 1919. An amendment prohibited the manufacture and sale of alcohol, which of course we know led to a lot of organized crime. Alcohol was thought to be a central social evil. In 1929, there was the stock market crash. It was an economic destruction that spread to a global level. It plunged the U.S. and the rest of the world into the Great Depression, where many businesses went bankrupt. Suicide was at an all-time high during this time period. During the Great Depression, millions of Americans suffered loss of jobs, poverty similar to Third World poverty, starvation, and loss of material items. The Dust Bowl of the 1930s lasted for about 8 years, where dust just blew on the southern plains. It was a yellowish-brown haze from the south and rolling walls of black from the north. The simplest acts of life, like breathing or eating, were no longer simple. Children had to wear dust masks to school. Women hung wet sheets over windows in an attempt to stop the dirt, and farmers unfortunately watched helplessly as their crops simply blew away. Basically, this modernist period is known as just the loss of the American dream. Prior to this, Americans all believed that the American dream absolutely existed. The central themes to the American dream was that America was this beautiful and bountiful place where you could make a world for yourself. There was optimism in the future. There was abundance and opportunity. And there was the importance of the individual, that everyone was important, independent, and self-reliant. We certainly saw all of these themes in Romanticism and into Transcendentalism and into the Realist movement. The American dream seemed lost. Events such as the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression made the American dream seem completely unreasonable. So people became disillusioned, cynical, and disappointed in their dream of the happily ever after. So during the modernist period, many themes began to emerge. Disillusionment was one of the major themes. So there was this self-examination and dissatisfaction with oneself, which led to sort of a paralysis or an inability to get anything done. And certainly all of this led to a loss of faith in government and in authority. Self-reliance, though, became a continuing theme from the Transcendentalist era, that you have to be self-reliant in the face of disillusionment of government and authority figures. Then there was this idea of Marxism. Marxist ideas were central ideas in some texts. and psychoanalysis led to a literary technique called the stream of consciousness. It was a writing style using syntax that imitates moment-by-moment flow of a character's perceptions and memories. Hemingway was a major writer during this time period. Many motifs he honored were honor, courage, and endurance in a life of stress, misfortune, and pain. Often in Hemingway's stories, the hero's world is violent and disorderly. Moreover, the violence and disorder seem to win. The Hemingway hero acts honorably in the midst of what will be a losing battle. In doing so, he finds fulfillment. He becomes a man, or proves his manhood and his worth. And this Hemingway hero and the hero's code tends to be a theme in many of the stories written by other authors. So the hero in the code was a belief in the self, such qualities of decency, bravery, competence, and skill. It is important to recognize and snatch up the rare, good, rich moments that life offers before those moments elude us or go away. The second part that we will explore is the idea of the Harlem Renaissance. The Harlem Renaissance is the name given to the period from the end of World War I and through the middle of the 1930s Depression, during which a group of talented African American writers produced a sizable body of literature in poetry, fiction, drama, and essays. Common themes of the Harlem Renaissance were the notion of two-ness, a divided awareness of one's identity. There was alienation and marginality, and a severe racial consciousness. The Back to Africa movement, led by Marcus Garvey, was one of the themes, but on the other hand, so was racial integration. Techniques of the Harlem Renaissance was that these black authors used folk dialect, syntax that uses the blues and jazz tradition. But the conflicts for Harlem Renaissance writers was the use of folk material for plot and diction, the problems of writing for an elite audience. In other words, they were writing about black problems in a strictly white society that was very highly educated.